네, 그럼 시작해 보겠습니다. ICNX 2025에 함께해 주신 여러분 진심으로 환영합니다. 먼저 인사드리겠습니다. 저는 오늘 진행을 맡은 아나운서 손진입니다. 여러분 만나서 반갑습니다. AI와 첨단 영상 미디어가 이뤄가는 K-콘텐츠와 엔터테크 산업의 미래를 위해서 국내외 전문가들과 글로벌 리더들이 함께 모여 새로운 방향과 비전을 제시하는 ICNX 2025. 방금 전 두 번째 키노트 세션에서는 퓨즈 테크니컬 그룹 타오리 프로듀서가 가상 제작에서 유튜브 스피어서부터 K-팝까지 첨단 영상 기술 무대 혁신이라는 주제로 몰입형 공연과 가상 제작의 최신 사례를 통한 혁신 아이디어와 비즈니스 전략에 대해서 깊이 있는 인사이트를 전해주셨습니다. 오늘 스페셜 세션은 랩스의 블레이크 쿠레 대표님께서 AI 아티스트와 디지털 클로닝, 미래 콘텐츠 창작 생태계의 설계를 주제로 AI와 디지털 무대 기술을 통한 팬 경험 혁신의 다양한 사례에 대해서 이야기해 주시겠습니다. 블레이크 쿠레 대표는 테크와 엔터테인먼트 산업 분야에서 디지털 캐릭터와 웹3 기반 몰입형 콘텐츠를 선도해온 글로벌 리더로 LA, 파리, 서울을 거점으로 스토리텔링과 기술을 결합한 혁신을 이끌고 있습니다. 또한 창작가의 권리, 문화 감성, 기술 혁신의 균형을 추구하는 비전 지향적 리더도로 유명합니다. 자, 그럼 박수와 함께 대표님을 무대 위로 모셔보겠습니다. Please welcome CEO Blake Kuhre to the stage with a warm round of applause.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here today. It is a very great honor for me to be part of this inaugural event here in INCHEON. For me, Korea is especially such a special place. I think ever since I moved to Los Angeles almost 18 years ago, my very first meal that I had there when I was transferred from Texas with the Walt Disney Company was Korean barbecue. I had never had it in my entire life before. And when I sat down and I was presented all of these colorful banchan side dishes, I think there were probably at least 30. This place in Los Angeles has the most banchan. It's called Genwa, Genwa. It's absolutely incredible. That made an indelible impression upon me, and I felt like I have to know more about this culture, this people. Unfortunately, LA, as you may or may not know, Los Angeles has the highest number of Koreans outside of Korea living in per capita in the density of the city. So it's a very special place. But with that, again, thank you for having me. I'm very humbled to be here. And I'm looking forward to telling you and sharing more about what I've learned through my journey starting out at initially the Walt Disney Company. So it was always a dream of mine to work for the mouse, as they say. You know, Mickey has been an indelible sort of place in my heart. I grew up with modest means. I didn't have the kind of budget to go to Disney World or Disneyland, but I was jealous of the kids that did get to go there. And I think the peak time to go to a Disney park, if you've never done it before, is around 10 years old, 8, 9, 10. So fortunately, I was able to go for the first time, but I was 18, so much, much later. But I always had a special place in my heart for it. And I developed a very deep passion for this brand and this company. And it's something that my wife asked me when she looked at this deck. She's like, why is Disney so big? Why do you have the Walt Disney Company so much bigger than all these other companies that you work for? Well, I mean, it's taken up half of my career. And I was fortunate to join them right out of university. And I had learned that I could go the route of taking this program called the Walt Disney College Program, where you're a college student, you take an internship, you get to do all these different things, you sell hot dogs, you give drinks out, you live on property. It was just, for me, something I always wanted to do, but I got rejected, so that's fine. But then, after a few months, I started to realize there was an opening at a station, ABC station, as you saw previously. The ABC is part of the Walt Disney Company, and I realized this is my foot in the door. And I think that sometimes you have to recognize what is going to be your foot in the door. If you can find a foot in the door anywhere, do it. Don't hesitate. Because that can open up such broader horizons for you. And it may not necessarily be exactly what you want to do, but it's part of a larger goal that you may have in mind. So at Disney, I was the host of Radio Disney. And Radio Disney was a phenomenal place to be at the time. It was a constellation of 50 AM and FM radio stations across the country. And I joined at a time where a little franchise called High School Musical started. And then another one called Hannah Montana started. So these were, unbeknownst to me, going to be monster successes. From there, Selena Gomez, Jonas Brothers, Demi Lovato, there are all these stars that came about. And I was definitely at the right place at the right time, and I'm very humbled to have been there for that journey. So I was there for 10 years, getting up at 4 a.m. every day, Monday through Friday, and then having to be ready to go, entertaining an audience, taking calls, hosting interviews with celebrities, and interacting with the audience. And of course, I was dead by about noon, lunchtime. I was completely out of energy. I didn't have it in me anymore. But I realized that that was a great opportunity. It was something that I enjoyed very much, but I also learned that what makes Disney so special, and even to this day, I believe it's true. Unlike all the other media companies that are out there, Disney goes back to the parks and resorts that so many other companies try to emulate, but nobody does it quite like them, even to this day. So if you look at the original park at Disneyland, that experience was built in 1955, almost 75 plus years ago, by Walt Disney himself. And then it changed into, morphing into an even larger property in Florida called Walt Disney World. And then that also turned into other parks in Japan, Tokyo Disneyland, Tokyo Disney Sea, Hong Kong Disneyland, Shanghai Disneyland, and Disneyland Paris, and then the newest one, which is coming to Abu Dhabi. You may know this in the United Arab Emirates. It's going to be opening in several years. So after Disney, I realized, okay, I stayed there for 10 years. A whole decade of my life, of my career, was basically there. And I realized there's more to life than working for the mouse. It's just not a fast company. Big companies are not fast. I learned this the hard way. So I decided all the rest of these companies were startups. And startups move very fast. You have to wear a lot of hats. You have to do a lot of different things. So Citizen is a news app. It basically helps citizen journalists gather and report news, live streaming. All of these involve live streaming in one form or another. Hulu, you may be familiar with. Tencent and ByteDance, a joint venture called LiveMe. I was part of the precursor to TikTok launching in the US. The Meet Group and Match Group are online dating. And then, of course, the company that I co-founded, Laps, which I'm going to tell you more about here shortly. Very excited to basically give you what has been the cornerstone of my entire life, which is indeed storytelling. So storytelling, if you think back to the beginning of humankind, storytelling, it would involve you sitting around a fire, changing ideas, exchanging stories with your parents, with your grandparents, with your villagers. You would sit around a fire and you would come to this realization that life is so much bigger than what you know it is today. But you only know that from word of mouth. And to this day, word of mouth is still the most powerful form of storytelling. Hearing it firsthand from someone, not online, not on TV, not out of home. Someone has to tell you face to face. And sometimes the most powerful stories to us are those that are given to us from our parents, our grandparents, our ancestors, our family. Family is so important. And so for me, storytelling goes back to being a journalist. That's what I went to university for. And everyone has a story. And every story sounds good until you hear the other side. So understand that that is very important to keep in mind too. And we're in an age now where stories are true and they're embellished and they're completely false and fabricated. And it's getting harder and harder and harder to know what is real and what isn't. So these are kind of the, I think, building blocks of what storytelling is all about. If you look at starting at 12 o'clock at noon and work our way down, communication, that's the very essence of it. Marketing, how are you getting that story out? The type of content, the type of story is very important. Brand, so many companies think that they are a brand, and they are in fact not. They are just a company. You have to have a really compelling story and a narrative behind you for people to believe in you. And you'd be surprised how few of them are actually that poignant. Creativity is essential to get that story out. History, of course, is probably one of the biggest parts of storytelling. Virality, as you know, everybody's trying to go viral for everything. If it can get as many likes and shares and follows, then you have a success, or do you? A lot of it is intentional, a lot of it isn't intentional, a lot of it is real, a lot of it isn't. And now we're in a place where it's very difficult to tell what is real and what isn't. And this is really something that has happened only in the past few years. Emotion is definitely a trigger that captures you more than anything else. I think Maya Angelou said it best, like, people may forget what you said, people may forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And if you can convey a feeling and you can control that, or you can control the kind of feeling that's emitted from you or that's impacting you, then that really does go a long way. You'd be in much better hands than a lot of others are. Is it worth sharing? Is this story something that's important enough to share? A lot of times it isn't. A lot of times you're too afraid to share. You want to keep it to yourself. And sometimes you're so excited you want to tell everybody that this is just too good. I got to tell you, you're not going to believe what just happened. And that experience is really a big part of why we're here. The experience of having this story, of being told this story, how it happened, what did the room smell like, what did you encounter, what did you see, what did you feel? All of that is part of the experience. And most importantly of all, and sometimes the hardest thing to attain, is trust. How much trust can you give someone? How much trust are you going to give someone? How much are you going to believe that what you're hearing or what you're seeing is true? Trust is definitely something that I think we all have been tested on, especially over the past several years, past 5 years in particular. So immersive entertainment, this is really a big part of why we're all here today. It's not enough now to just be entertained on a screen. You need to experience it. And that's what makes, as a company like Disney, very, very special, because you're experiencing it from top to bottom. You're suspending reality, and you're experiencing everything that you would normally have in your house or in your car or waiting for a train. You're getting to have this emotion take over you. And that's really important. So we're seeing this now to be the case in something called DOE, which is digital out-of-home entertainment. A traditional way of calling it would be out of home. That would just be billboards or signage, but now we are seeing increasingly digital signage everywhere. And that's a big part of what DOE is, digital out of home. That seems to be the most successful form, as we just saw previously, how that is conveyed to you as a member of an audience wherever you go. And it could be voluntary or involuntary. Something else we're going to talk about is the digital doubles, which are also I'd like to refer to as digital cloning. That's where you're taking someone that exists in real life and you're making a digital copy of them in every facet possible so that they can be interoperable and basically inputted into anywhere you want. Being brand-centric is also incredibly important to stay brand consistent. A lot of times that's not the case, and it becomes a much, much bigger issue. One thing that's been very, I think, successful for brands and why they like this more than anything else is now they are in control. Having control over entertainment, I think, is what's made K-pop, for example, extremely successful compared to, say, American pop music. You have much more discipline, you have vertical integration with K-pop, and you have the artists that are more than willing to produce, to perform, and do so consistently. And when it comes to entertainment, consistent performance is one of the hardest things that you're going to be able to come by. Because you don't have bad days. You can't have a bad day. And that you can't have a controversy. You can't have anything that would make a brand drop you or completely forget about ever having you work for them again. This happens quite a lot, as you know. But if you're in complete control of a digital double, that's eliminated. These are also more targeted to Gen Zs and millennials. So we saw a little bit about the Sphere in Las Vegas. This is probably the most exciting outdoor entertainment venue in the United States today. And this show in particular is The Wizard of Oz that's been playing since August. And The Wizard of Oz, if you're not familiar with it, it's a classic American fairy tale story, almost 100 years old. It came out in 1939. And yet it's emblazoned in so many minds and hearts to this day. There's so many references to this movie in American pop culture today, from following a yellow brick road to clicking your heels 3 times, to the famous line, "I don't think we're in Kansas anymore." There's just all these references that may not particularly resonate outside of the American audience, but in particular, this show has been a monster hit. And if you're not familiar with it, check out this video, a little bit of a trailer to give you a feel for how they've transformed this space.
That you dare to dream really do come true.
Hard to believe it's only been since August 28th where this came out. And now it has taken America by storm. If you look at how much revenue this has generated since opening, over 500,000 tickets have already been sold, 65 million USD in 2 weeks' time. So it's averaging about $2 million a day. And granted, this is just a pre-recorded, remastered, re-edited, embellished movie that came out 86 years ago. Granted, it also has a lot more special effects, and it's in a much different way of experiencing it. But because this is so special and it tugs at people's heartstrings, because this has been sort of inherited from my parents, my grandparents, because it was special to them, it has to be special to me, even if I don't like it. I'm sure you find the same thing. Maybe there's a food that your grandparents make that you don't care for, you gotta eat it, gotta have a smile on your face, it's the same thing. ABBA Voyage is an example too of another very successful entertainment experience in London. This was a very popular group in the late 70s and early 80s. So it has a specific targeted demographic and audience that they're able to experience them in their prime, and then maybe they wouldn't have been able to back then. I'm not a very big ABBA fan myself, but I know a lot of people that are, and this has actually been really successful too. More than 3 million tickets have been sold since this came out. It's contributed apparently almost £2 billion to the UK economy, and it's averaging £374,000 a day. And this has been out for almost 3 years now, but this has also become a monster hit. And it's something where you're taking a musical act in their prime, you're recreating what the experience would be like if you were essentially transported to the late 70s and early 80s, but then modernizing it to today's audience and introducing some audience members that may not even know who they are. And so it's a whole shared communal experience. And I think that that's a big part of why these are so successful, because you're having that community involved. You're having an audience that cares about what it is on the screen that they're seeing in a way that they've never done so before. This group needs no introduction, I don't think, but this is what's really interesting about Blackpink, is that they have taken, for those that couldn't get a ticket to their concert tour, they were able to experience it virtually. And so Meta did a partnership with them at Coachella. Of course, they can't say Coachella, but this is something where if you weren't able to get a ticket, you could go and experience what it's like to basically be there. And VR concerts, they're nothing new, right? But the way that this was done was a little bit different. And you may have already heard about it, some of you may have even seen it. But then they made this visible in the metaverse. But really, is it something that you'd want to go experience in the metaverse? No. Meta can definitely use a lot more help there, but they're trying. So this is, I don't think you obviously know there's a lot more money to be made, but this just shows you like a virtual tour can be just as successful as a real tour, except you don't have to deal with the demands of the artists, the grueling travel schedule, the touring that's involved, all of the logistics. You basically just set it up and go. Now, setting it up, of course, as we learned, is a challenge in and of itself, but there's a lot of overhead that's been eliminated from the transaction and the equation. So what are digital doubles? As mentioned previously, they're taking someone that exists in real life and you're replicating them in a way that you can make them interoperable into other worlds, whether that be a video game, whether that be a movie, whether that be an app, it really doesn't matter. But generally, it's created through 3D scanning and capture, of which our company has a studio in Paris that does this very, very well. And what's really special about this and what we're striving to do is to give sovereignty over that particular asset that now belongs to that creator or that celebrity. Because when the current form shows, if they are going to a studio and they're doing a movie, then that studio controls that file and everything that's associated with it. And then a lot of times it's just deleted and they have to recreate it all over again anytime there's a new production. So we're aiming for having that, giving complete control to the celebrity or the creator. They would have the file, and then anything that they get from that, then we would be able to partner with them. This is an example of the rig that we have in Paris. It's pretty advanced. There are several patents on it. It's not your typical motion capture rig, but it's something that does capture every kind of element and nuances that really aren't quite possible with a lot of the rigs that are available with traditional motion capture today. So virtual influencers, what is a virtual influencer? It's essentially created from nothing. It's not anything that exists in real life. They're not autonomous because they still have human interaction. They still have a human-based story that's going to give them the direction in which they need to go. And that story is so important because unlike an AI influencer, which we'll get to, having that kind of compelling emotion that's involved and having, essentially, they're a puppet, if you think about it, that makes a big, big impression upon the audience, and they can tell the difference. No controversies involved. They're not going to go off the rails. They're not going to say the wrong thing at the wrong time. They're not going to get sick. They're not going to demand more money. This is something that really has been resonating with brands more and more, and I'll give you a couple examples here coming up. These are virtual influencers. You probably have seen some of them before. I'm going to focus in on one called Little Michaela. You can see here the second in the middle of the screen. So Little Michaela, this is probably considered in the US the most successful virtual influencer, and the studio that we partner with in Paris actually created her originally, of all things, for an ad for BMW. She was never meant to be a virtual influencer, and she was just an asset. She was essentially sold to a company called Brood, and you may have heard of them because Dapper Labs acquired them. She generates about $2 million USD a year in endorsements. not unlike a very successful influencer, a legacy influencer, a human influencer, as we like to call them, a legacy influencer. She has the same capabilities, but far more advanced because there are no human limitations, frankly. What else is interesting about little Michaela is she was the first virtual client for creative artist agency. And CAA is considered one of the biggest talent agencies in the world, along with Endeavor. And you might know Endeavor's been on a big buying spree with UFC, WWE, and many more. So this is really interesting because she's so far the only one. There's probably going to be more to come. So I'm going to skip back, actually. The AI influencers are the other component. So you're going to see more of these, but they're not nearly as, I would say, as evolved as a virtual influencer, because these are essentially reskinned chatbots, more or less. I mean, now you can make them available. They're always on. That's pretty cool, but does it really have the same kind of compelling narrative that a virtual influencer does? Not really. But if you want to have that kind of constant interaction, and an AI influencer is something that we're going to see more and more of. So LAPS is the company that I co-founded. It's an acronym for Los Angeles, Paris, and Seoul. We're based in LA. Our studio's in Paris, and Seoul is really our North Star. And this is kind of a sizzle reel to give you a feel for what we've created collectively. This was a sort of coming out party for little Michaela with her BMW commercial. And there'll be others that you can take a look at here. It's a little bit about what we do at LAPS. So my personal belief, and I don't think that I'm unique in thinking this way, is that the real key here is, and I've been asked this before in presentations, like we've been able to, for example, there have been virtual K-pop groups that have been created, but they were not successful. And why is that? I think it's because the audience isn't completely ready for something that's all 100% virtual, in the same way that you would need to have them opposite a real character that you know, that you trust, that you love, endorsing them. So I think that if you're conditioning the audience in such a way to make them feel at ease and comfortable with accepting this new character, then you have a winning combination. But to just thrust something that's completely created artificially, that's really tough. Maybelline has gotten into this. They're a very big cosmetic brand in the US, and now they have their own virtual influencer. And the name is terrible. It's May. I mean, come on, you can get more original than that. But here she is opposite Hadid.
Maybelline New York.
Gigi Hadid, I think.
New Glossy Surreal Extensions Mascara. Lash Reality Extended. Hybrid fibers. 36% more visible length. Surreal impact.
Are your lashes real?
New Glossy Surreal Extensions Mascara. Maybelline New York.
So there's a great example of conditioning there. She's opposite a real character. And this is nothing new. This has been going on for decades. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? That was, for me, one of the most iconic movies combining live action with animation. It was also very unique in the way that you're taking two studios, actually several studios, Disney, Warner Brothers, and others, and combining all of the characters together, but also live action. This was a movie that came out when I was a kid, and it made me realize what is possible having animated characters with real people. And the trend has continued over the years. That's a very young Brad Pitt there in a movie called Cool World. Wasn't a very good movie, but it proved a point that live action and animation continued sort of on the heels of that. We all know Paddington, and that franchise has done exceedingly well. Ryan Reynolds in If. This is my favorite recent movie, Alita Battle Angel. If you haven't seen this movie, it is really something else. James Cameron was involved with the production of it, and it is seriously one of the most incredible live action and animation movies today. Of course, hundreds of millions of dollars were involved with this, but it came out in 2018, 2019. This is only going to continue. As you see, like we've seen again and again, this is poised for explosive growth. And not only that, but this is capturing a significant amount of the avatar market. If you look at where it's headed, it is quadrupling in valuation over the next several years. But this was something we don't have time for, unfortunately, but it shows you the latest AI actress, Tilly Norwood. If you haven't already seen her, it's just a publicity stunt. It's almost not even worth showing you the video, but it is worth mentioning, so I will skip past her. This is the most sobering slide that I wanted to save for last. Basically, it shows the trajectory that we're in now within 6 years' time. By 2034, we're going to see this, by 60% of the market share will be virtual influencers as opposed to regular human influencers. It's pretty scary, but it is fascinating and exciting at the same time. So thank you very much. I greatly appreciate taking time, and I hope this presentation was somewhat entertaining and insightful.
Thank you for the insightful speech. So we'll now move on to the Q&A sessions. Once again, please give him a big round of applause. 다시 한번 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다. 네, 이제 객석에서 질문을 한번 받아볼 텐데요. 질문이 있으신 분들은 자유롭게 손을 들어주시면 저희 스태프분들이 마이크를 가져다 드리도록 하겠습니다. We'll now open for the floor for the questions. If you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand and our staff will bring a microphone to you. 질문이 있으신 분들은 손을 들어주시면 저희 스태프분들이 마이크를 가져다 드리도록 하겠습니다. 질문이 있으신 분들 계실까요? 네, 손 들어주시면 저희가 마이크를 가져다 드리도록 하겠습니다. 네, 앞에 계신 분에게 질문을 받아보도록 하겠습니다.
우선 제가 또 질문을 하게 돼서 좀 민망하긴 한데 아무튼 질문을 참을 수 없을 만큼 굉장히 흥미로운 이야기들을 많이 전달을 해주셔서 참을 수가 없었습니다. 말씀해 주셨던 내용 중에 가장 관심이 갔었던 부분은 이제 그 버추얼 인플루언서들이 인간 인플루언서를 거의 대체한다 싶을 정도로 60% 이상의 시장 점유율을 예상한다고 하셨는데 물론 아까 말씀하실 때 컨디셔닝을 통해서 가상과 현실을 결합함으로써 좀 사람들에게 거부감을 좀 줄이는 방식을 채택하고 있다고는 하셨지만 그럼에도 불구하고 여전히 어떤 authenticity, 그러니까 진정성 측면에서 조금 더 다가갈 수 있는 방면이 있는지 그리고 그런 게 있다면 어느 정도 시장 점유율이 더 높아질 수 있는지 더 빠르게 가속화될 수 있는지가 궁금합니다.
Certainly. So thank you very much for the question. It is troubling to see the current trajectory that by 2034, which isn't that far from now, we're talking about 9 years' time, they will have more market share than legacy influencers. The authenticity is a very big problem because we're seeing now with AI, it can go off the rails and it can be something that generative AI in particular and Sora, especially as we've seen, has been lending itself to, I would say, having a little too much too soon. But the great thing about virtual influencers is that there's still that component of having the story behind it that a human is involved with in creating and promoting and controlling, but a sort of a shared control and not an utter complete, say as if it were a normal legacy human influencer, that would be even more of an issue. And that's where brands are the most concerned. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are paying these influencers through endorsements, and that's a big part of their revenue. So if this influencer doesn't say the right thing at the right time or has a controversy or something, there can be millions of dollars lost and their reputation is gone forever. But with a virtual influencer, that's not the case. And they never age, and they never get sick, and they can be everywhere all at the same time. So I think that as long as there is still involvement of impassioned people, like essentially they're like puppets. They're like almost virtual puppets. As long as you have that component, then I think you're okay. It's when you completely give it up to, say, artificial intelligence to take complete control over, that's going to be an issue. And then that also doesn't really, the nuances of human beings, it's not even there yet. I think it's like something around 4 or 5 year old child, right? Isn't that what the current sentiment is? Of course, that's going to continue to grow, but it's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you for the insightful answers. 네, 저희가 시간 관계상 많은 분들의 질문을 받아보고 싶지만 이번 시간에도 역시 한 분의 질문만 받아보고 진행하도록 하겠습니다. 이어지는 오후 세션 라운드 테이블에서도 패널로 참석하실 예정이니까요. 질문들은 그때 받아보는 걸로 하겠습니다. 그러면 우리 세션을 마무리하기 전에 끝 인사와 소감을 한번 전해 듣도록 하겠습니다. Before we close, could you please share your impression on participating in ICNX 2025 and closing remarks?
Certainly. Once again, it has been an absolute honor and privilege to be here for this inaugural event. South Korea is truly at the forefront of entertainment. And it goes back to, for me, 2012, Gangnam Style and Psy when that came out, and that's now 13 years ahead where we are today. But what we're seeing today here in INCHEON is truly remarkable. And I think that the ambitious endeavor of having this to become a techno park, essentially as it were, is really going to be competitive on the global stage. You're seeing this in other regions of the world too, but here in particular is especially exciting because it's almost as if the torch has been or is currently being passed from Hollywood to Seoul. So this is a very exciting time to be here and to help provide what's next in entertainment. So thank you for helping me play a small part in it and being here.
네, 다시 한번 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다. 네, 이상으로 스페셜 세션을 이렇게 마무리해 보도록 하겠습니다. 연사님 덕분에 귀중하고 유익한 인사이트를 얻을 수 있는 시간이었으리라 믿습니다. 잠시 후 15시 정각에 한국의 K-이머시브 전시 사례와 글로벌 경쟁력이라는 주제로 오태윤 현대푸처낫 전시사업팀 팀장님의 인사이드 토크가 진행될 예정이오니 많은 관심과 참여 부탁드리겠습니다. 모든 세션을 현장 접수를 통해 참석이 가능합니다. 사전 예약을 하지 못하신 분들은 등록 데스크에서 접수를 부탁드리겠습니다. 그리고 더 나은 ICNX 2025를 만들기 위해서 오늘 참여하신 세션에 대한 만족도 조사를 진행하고 있습니다. 지금 화면에 보이고 있는 QR코드에 접속하셔서 설문에 참여하신 분들께 향후에 추첨을 통해서 소정의 선물을 드린다고 하니까요. 많은 참여 부탁드리겠습니다. 그럼 20분간 휴식 시간을 갖고 잠시 후에 뵙겠습니다. 여러분 고맙습니다.